Hello, Jose. I don't have any audio right now. Can't hear
How
anything.
about now?
Oh, okay, there you go.
Okay. I'm having with my microphone. Let's make sure the volume is up
Yep.
and recording is up. And Breck is on. Breck,
Ooh,
how are you?
good. How are you guys?
Well, getting ready for the 4th. Tomorrow's gonna be a big day for us, so we're gonna be setting up shop at the parade, dealing with a lot of heat. Steven, can you hear me?
Yep, I got you. Hello, everyone.
Hey, how are you?
No complaints. Finally getting settled back in. I've been out of country for like the last 3 weeks, so
Welcome back. Andrew, how are you, sir?
Good. How about yourself?
All right. Hi, Krista.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Bill.
Good evening.
Who are we waiting for? Molly?
Yeah, we've got enough. We can go ahead and get started though. I know going into a holiday weekend, we can try and get people on their way to their weekend.
Gotcha.
All right. Call the order. Do we have any owners? Anyone have any comments?
And it's only us right now on the
Looks like Paul joined as well.
Orashkin. Okay.
All right, hearing none. Agenda look good for everybody. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Yes, so moved.
Okay. Second, anybody?
Yes.
All right. There's Molly. All right, let's do it. So my celebration, so the GoGov stuff. Stephen, were you added to the meetings?
Yes, I was. I've accepted them and I'll start attending them starting next week.
Okay. I know I was added to them as well. They're at a time that I likely won't be able to go most of the time, but I trust y'all to bring things back if we need it. Any other
I think it's
updates on those?
just update for you that they are moving to a monthly rotation, not every other week. So we can talk more later as we get into the topic, but that's going to be a monthly occurrence now.
It is the time for that topic. So if you have more info on that you want to discuss, let's discuss it now, because that's where we're at.
The only thing I might add is that I've updated the Teams folder with the last meeting minutes from the last meeting and the list of outstanding items and their state. Actually, it's a complete list, including ones that are not outstanding. It's not an entire list showing which are closed and which are still remaining, and they're in the Teams folder.
Has there been anything closed out in since our last time? So I think the big thing we were looking on was for the reports and getting that access.
So
Did that get dealt with?
So I do have access to the reporting functions. I'm able to run standard reports just fine. When we're running custom reports is where we're having issues. We select the appropriate output fields, and what ends up happening is that some of the outputs are correlated to a different column with a different name. So, for example, if I select date closed, it comes out on expected date closed. It doesn't show up as date closed on that column.
Okay.
But that's something me and Andrew are working on. So I sent them the latest report, and it's something we're going to have to mention to the folks at GoGov and to CCDD.
So
Yeah,
do we need
Krista,
to track that then? Because like that, if it sounds like that's an issue that needs to be added to the list so that it is talked about.
Yeah, it's going to be a new issue, and I think the first hurdle was to get Jose access and able to run it, because for some reason Lauren could run reports, but Jose couldn't. But that's been resolved, and he can run reports. Now we're into, okay, we're running the reports, but what are we getting? And that's where we're seeing discrepancies in what we're expecting to see. So that's the next step on the reports of when we customize a report, we want to get exactly what we're expected to receive, which currently we're not. So that'll be the next back and forth with Angel and CCDD to see, is there something else that's broken, or does GoGov need to look at something to correct it?
Okay.
But I guess just a follow up on kind of the open items, there was some, I'll say, disagreement on what is considered a bug versus an enhancement. Seems like GoGov has taken the approach of a lot of things are more of enhancements and not true bugs. So some things have maybe been kicked to the curb, or, oh, that's a nice to have, but we're not truly going to be working on it. So there has been a little roadblock there. In conversation with CCDD, GoGov does have its limitations as userability from it, but it is functioning as expected. So, my view is it's a little primitive of an application, but it does what it's supposed to do. It's just that we would like it to be better. So we'll continue to provide enhancements to CCDD and GoGov to see if they can make improvements where we would like, and we'll go from there.
So do our admins or whoever have access to submit, like, I mean, anytime I'm working with a software vendor, we have basically a portal or some place or some way to submit enhancements. Do we have that? Does somebody have that we can track these things through?
I checked on my end on the admin portal, and there is no submission. You could put in a help desk ticket for support, but being that we funnel everything through CCDD, and if I was directly to contact them, they're going to direct me to CCDD. So there's
But
not
does
much for me.
Angel, like, somebody, I mean, we need to be working with CCDD. So
Right.
it's not just us versus them. So does Angel have access to do something? Like, who's their person over there who's working with somebody's got an account rep assigned to them. Who
Yeah,
on our side has an
Angel.
account rep?
Angel
Angel.
owns that. We provide a list that we have an outstanding list, both CCD and CROA have, that she goes to GoGov and submits it, and then they report back to her. She reports back to us.
Hello?
Okay. Anything else with this one? No? All right, moving on to key card system. I did actually had a comment on the key card system. I was over at Island Village yesterday, and it looks like those were all installed and are activated, the new system in Island Village. But I also noticed that the fitness center is not operating off of the push button. So if anybody is walking around in front of the door stays unlocked the entire time.
So I notified facilities on that. There is an issue with that door specifically. And there's a specific sensor that once you use the key card and you open the door, if you don't close it entirely, it doesn't lock well. And it's because if you look at the top of the door, there's a magnet that's
Yep.
twisted off.
This is a different issue because if you walk and the door is unlocking from the inside when you walk in front of, kind of like the Artisan Clubhouse door, like when you walk up to it, it unlocks. That's how the fitness center door is working, even though there's a push button. So while I was standing there, Jim was inside, like just waiting in the air conditioner because the door to the main common room hadn't been
Right.
unlocked for us. And the door stayed unlocked, like the thing was green the entire time that he was like pacing in front of the door. So it's operating off a motion sensor versus the
Right.
button.
So I'll ask them to remove it, and we'll make sure that we just have the button working going forward.
Yeah, because there's a stair stepper right there. So if someone's on
Right.
the stair stepper, then like the door is just open all the time.
Yes.
But so were we doing the island? Because I was surprised to see it installed there, knowing that it hasn't been
So-
installed in Artisan yet.
So I had sent the schedule out. I met with Scott. There was some issues with scheduling, and I needed to get as much done as quickly as possible. So I told him, knock out the quickest ones you can that don't require a lot of intense labor, and then we'll fix Lakeside and Artisan, which are the two basically heavy hitters, and push them down the totem pole. So we're just swapping out. We're leaving Lakeside for last and moving Artisan for, I believe it's the. Let me look at the calendar because there is a switch. I did send, by the way, a Gantt chart with the list. I believe they're going to start on the 11th, so we have to swap out those dates. So originally it was Lakeside, then Artisan, but it's going to be Artisan, then Lakeside. But the good news is that North Village, East Village, Spring Park, Spring Lake, Spring Lake, with the exception of one door, because there's some construction that needs to get done. They have to run a new fitting. They're all practically done, and we're just addressing any issues with cards or any issues with the scheduling. But so far, so good. It was, for me, let's get the most done in the least amount of time because we were already behind schedule, and that became one of the pressing points in the last meeting. So
Tom, anything?
Well, I'm just, can you clarify? So the Artisan will be the 11th. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, I just have to look at the schedule because Sky's been staying in touch with me with respects to all the jobs that are being done. So we have a call on Friday, and we'll confirm it on Friday for the 11th. If it is a go, then I'll make sure to send you an email and include Bill McFadden and the rest of the team.
Is Bill
Okay.
back by the 11th? He's on vacation right now. Is he back by the 11th?
I don't
Not
know
sure.
I don't know the answer to that. I actually thought he was coming back tomorrow, but maybe it's a week from tomorrow.
He's not. I don't think he's. Maybe. I don't know.
I don't know.
I can ask.
Yeah, you can ask Jacob. Actually, I'm going to be over there in a little while. I can ask Jacob when I go over there.
I'm here now.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so you have the timeline, you have the Gantt charts. Again, that's the latest. I got to make some changes so that it's more current, but as I update them, I'll just forward it to the team.
Yeah, I don't think whether Bill is there or not is really an important factor. We can do, if they want to come on the 11th, we can support the 11th.
Because is it down for a few hours, or are we like talking? I guess that's where I want to make sure Bill is.
He's totally up to speed on that with this.
Yeah.
We've gone through this several times. It can be days, it could be several days. They're not committing to getting it done in 2 days. They think it might be 2 days, but
'Cause
they're very clear
11th
that,
is a Thursday, if I remember correctly, because I fly back the 12th.
Yeah.
So the 11th is a
Well-
Thursday. Does it make more sense to do it on a
On the 15th?
Monday or Tuesday when they're like actually around for the week versus get 2
Well,
days in and say, oh, sorry, we gotta go.
So Krista, originally Lakeside was slated for the 15th, so I could always switch it and put Artisan on the 15th if that works. I was just trying to buy time and bring everything closer and closer as opposed to keep delaying it. But if that works for you guys, I'll make it the 15th.
Well, definitely a Monday is better than a Thursday.
Okay.
And I just think with Lakeside, I think that one's easier to manage if the doors don't work versus the clubhouse, just knowing like the amount of things in the dining, like,
Right.
I mean, just, yeah, the bar, all of those things, like.
Got it.
So at what point do you think that after Artisan, we're gonna do Lakeside, you said, and then is Lakeside are we done after Lakeside?
After Lakeside, we're done. Then we do a walkthrough. We begin just ensuring that everything works as intended. We'll review all the current schedules and make sure any changes that need to be made are made. And at that point, it's just signing off saying, hey, this is done. And then I can move on to the next phase, which is
Okay,
the integration.
Yes, and on the topic of integration, I assume you mean by that we will enable phone access to the doors?
I think it's a good discussion point. We can enable the phone access to the doors. However, what I'm talking about integration, I'm talking about the ONR piece. But I think that's a whole nother animal. But we can enable it and then later on, just migrate it over.
I would have concerns, maybe we take that as part of the ONR discussion, because I would have
Right.
concerns about having people download an app, because I assume that to do that, you're gonna have to use like the Gallagher app.
Yes.
And then asking them to then yet again download another app when we go live with ONR.
So my thought was not to enable it and wait till the integration is fully done with ONR. That way they're just using ONR. They're not using the Gallagher app.
So I understand that, but so far the phone testing has not gone real smoothly, of the activation. And I would propose an alternative that we enable a select group of people, say, for example, the dog park people, and give them the app, even though it's the Gallagher app, so that we can go through a test phase to make sure that there are no glitches in that portion of the system. Because we've already seen that even in my own case, we've had several times where now it didn't work. We definitely don't want to go to the community as a whole and find out that we got a large scale problem when we can have a test group, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's a manageable group, not 70, 80 people, but
So there's
us.
like 30 people in the dog park, and what we could do is, my understanding is that we have somebody over that periodically checks over the dog park from management. We could actually hand people flyers. We could reduce that to say 10 people if we wanted to. And as they came in, we could say, hey, you know what? If you want to try this, be a part of a test group, hand them a piece of paper, download this app, and we'll enable your phone. And then you can give us some feedback on how it goes. And that way we would sort of confine the damages if it doesn't work.
Gotcha. Krista, thoughts?
Steven, I saw you unmuted. Did you have stuff to add?
Yeah, I was just gonna suggest that, if we're able to have a controlled group, but it sounds like we're kind of on the same page with that mindset. Because just doing a blanket for like everyone that goes to a dog park is probably not the greatest idea. And not to ding yours, Tom, but just from the perspective of like being able to control it. And additionally too, I think we would want to even have, even though that if the same equipment is on all the locations, you would want to have people that are in different areas trying to access it via their phone, because who knows, there could be some type of interference, whatever, at one location that's not at another. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a hardware guy,
Mhm.
but just something to think about. And then I like the number 10 to 15 people that are willing to actually provide feedback versus just saying, hey, here's a group of people, you can use it or not, and more having controlled participation. That's
What if
how
we
I would do it if I was running a product team. So
Yeah, I
What if we
completely agree.
solicited pilot users from the other committees and board members? Because then you already know they have a vested interest.
I think it's a good idea.
Certainly, I would think everyone on this committee should have the Gallagher app and should be testing this. I don't know how many people are. I know I am. And, I run into several problems. So I think everybody in this committee should have this app and should be going to doors and verifying that it actually works. That's the first level of the test. Then if you wanted to widen it to whatever group you wanted to other committees, a select group of people within a group like the dog park or whatever, fine. But certainly all of us should be testing this. I know I'm testing it. I've been out there twice this week.
So I
Chris,
don't think
I
I've
like
been
that.
given, I don't think I've been given the Gallagher credential or like how to set that up. So, I mean, we could
Krista,
start by doing that.
do you want me to send it to the entire team?
Yeah, I think we need to start with this team for sure.
Okay, no problem. It'll be done. So just I'll shoot you guys an email with notifying you that you'll be receiving an email to install the app, and then it'll come with a set of instructions, and I'll be on standby when you do so in case you need further assistance.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say finally on this topic is as you install this app, even during the installation process, I ran into some issues. I guess we would ask that everybody note the experience. If you have a problem or encounter a problem, for example, with me, it took me to a link that was not valid. I got a 404. That we note that so that we can bring these back to Jose and as a bug list.
Would you want to put that in a spreadsheet like we were talking about with the GoGov issues?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you walk up to a door like I did yesterday and it didn't work, it went to the list. This is a problem.
I'm
Do we want to
just
keep
making.
it true? Do we want to keep it truly to this committee to test it, or are you looking for a larger sample size?
I think we start with this committee and then I think we should move up. I don't know, Tom.
Yeah,
I think
no,
we should.
I don't think if we all get this and we go through the installation and we go to a few doors and everything works and there's no problem, then we could expand it. If we run into some issues, then of course we don't expand it.
Do we need to expand it? I guess that's the question. So
Yeah.
if we have this committee test, is that sufficient for testing, or
Well,
are you looking to have, a sample set of maybe 10 or 15 more people?
yeah. So in engineering, the sample size was 32. So we used a sample size of 32 whenever for failure analysis or whatever as the smallest sample size for a population. We have over 10,000 people. I think we said 14,000. So I think we should get at least 30 people or so in the test group. People that you can trust. They could be chairs of committees or whatever, and send them out and then see how it looks with those 32 people or 35 or 40, whatever you want.
So how about if we
Well-
start by getting everyone on this committee going, Andrew included as the liaison, get everyone on this committee going, and see where we're at. If we as the 7 of us, 8 of us encounter a bunch of issues, then we don't want to go out to the others yet. If we don't, then we will work through Andrew to see if we can source some additional pilot users from other committees, and board members as a pilot group.
So we'll call this
Yeah,
the alpha
I'm
test.
agreeable there, Chris, to that. Let's do just our committee first. If everything checks out, then we expand it to the committees and rest of the directors on the board as the secondary test.
What'd you say, Bill?
The alpha test, and then we'll go to
Yep.
beta test, and then
Yeah.
we'll go to wide release.
All right.
Anything else with key card? system.
One last question for Jose. So it sounds like hardware is progressing well and should be done this month. What about the software regarding the database and users? I know
So
you Artisan
so-
Park you finished, but what about across the board?
across the board, it's all been done. So what we do is we've been gauging and averaging out how many calls we get regarding IDs. They've dwindled down plenty. Um, since then, we haven't had any major issues. So the crux of our issues were originally in Dog Park. We haven't had one since it's been stable. We get 1 or 2 calls every other day regarding cards not working. Sometimes it's a bad card. Sometimes it is a difference in the tags that were missed, but they're far and few in between. And it's
Did we
less
resolve
than-
the thing where the accounts we were bringing over were not just active accounts? Because I know you said that
Yes,
last meeting, and then
yes.
I was working with Bill, and they were not active accounts. They were active accounts, but the cards were not active. Did we
So-
resolve that?
So I met with Bill after I met with when I was with Tom, and I had mentioned that a lot of that stuff we had the front desk compare with Cyranet and remove the ones that were no longer there. So we based it on the lease agreement or the ownership title that's for the owner. That's how we were able to weed them out. So yeah, so it's been done. Is it perfect? Probably not. You might have a couple of them still there, but it's
So,
pretty clean.
but their cards weren't active. That was the
No, the
concern
cards are not
last time.
active.
Their cards were not active, so we were bringing people in who weren't active.
They were
Um,
removed
Okay.
from the list. In other words, so let's say John Doe A is an inactive user but still on Keyscan. John Doe A is no longer on Gallagher.
hmm
So we made sure that the front desk removed them and just kept it clean as possible.
Okay. So, but I guess my question, I know, let me try and rephrase this. The question is, so they were going through that manually. There wasn't a way to pull that information based on the card activation date.
No, because they needed an original source. The original source is Cyranet because that's how we know who's inactive.
But they were the cards were inactive in Cyranet. So it's
No.
like that person that I sent you, I looked at it with Bill on the screen in Cyranet, and that person was on your list, but the card was inactive and had not been used and had expired 3 years ago. So are we doing all of that? I guess my question, it doesn't matter, I suppose, if you've already resolved it, but I guess it was just around we were making people do a whole lot more manual work than was necessary.
It was a whole lot of manual work. And you're correct, then it was necessary. So, but it was taken care of, and the team addressed it, and there was no way around it because when this started, I was in here until I got back, and then that's when I tried to get a grasp of it. But yeah, I mean, it's working fine and it's clean. I don't know if you would like for me to at some point do an extract and then you can compare.
I mean, I don't have anything to compare it to. I don't have access to that system, and I don't need or want access to that system because there's no reason for me to have it. It just seems strange that there was a field in the system that we were not able to leverage to pull the information.
And I guess go forward, Jose, are you going to do any type of monthly or quarterly review of that database to ensure consistency of as close as we can be to active users in Celebration?
I don't think that's necessary, Andrew, because cards are set up with an expiration date. And so like everybody's card expires. This was a case where we were migrating the database over. And so we had a lot of extra people we were going through the manual effort to validate, even though their card had expired 3 years ago. So like there isn't anything that like deletes them from the system, but their card, like we don't have a worry about them being accessing things they can't because their cards are still being expired appropriately. It was more just creating this manual effort of bringing a resident in who was a resident 3 years ago but isn't a resident anymore. We're not giving them access, but it was just the effort of going through and reviewing all those people. So the system itself handles the when they come in and when the lease is when they change, town halls managing that, people have the expiration date set on their cards. So like that process I'm not concerned about.
So then
The only thing I would
every
add on-
record in the database has an expiration date, whether it's in the past or in the future.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Good to know.
So the one thing I would add and piggyback on Andrew, you do need to set up a data retention policy.
Policy.
Just because you're collecting, even though it's not really PII, the way that privacy laws are changing seems like on a daily basis at this point. We do want to make sure that we're purging anyone's personal information out of there after a
certain amount of
period
years.
is expired. Yeah. So just something to think about. I don't think it's like critical, but you don't want an incident happening and then someone that didn't want their information out there all of a sudden, is exposed. So
is there any automation features available within the tool itself? I mean, that's a task that should be automated. It's not something that somebody should be reviewing. It's something that's like they've been expired for 2 years, delete it.
We can write rules for that. Yes.
Okay.
We can.
Or 5 years or whatever I know with
But my thing is
corporate
that
it's like 5 years or something.
I just need to make sure that whoever that person is that writes that policy, just lets us know that that's legit. I don't know what that process is, or what's the standard here in Celebration. So I don't even know if we have a retention.
We don't. We had this conversation in the communications advisory group, and I was basically told that we don't need one, and I very much disagreed. But that was the board member shot me down on that one. So there is no policy right now.
it'll only take one lawsuit.
Right?
That's it.
Yep.
Yeah, our legal team at my work is the one that sets the policies on retention. So
Yeah.
We have 1 year on
counsel to help.
we have 1 year on email, and like unless you're under a legal hold, and then I think
Right.
documents, unless it's a certain thing related to financials, it's a certain year. So but yes, I did raise that question has been raised and it was shot down.
Nice.
So maybe
Yeah.
we need to raise it again.
Yeah, I mean, like
Yeah,
Tom,
if there's a
go back.
recommendation from the committee, let me know, and I can bubble that up both to the board and to Charlie, our attorney, to opine on what is appropriate.
I think the recommendation would be to follow whatever legal precedent is set, because we don't want to be basically, I mean, retention stuff is more about reducing your liability. So it's whatever we are legally required to do, we should do, and probably not much more. Just from a if you wanted to, if your goal is to truly minimize liability, then we keep what's legally required and nothing else. If we wanted to, like, then it becomes probably a board decision of do they want to expand beyond what is just legally required and extend that time frame. But there is no, that would be a board has to set that policy and probably, or maybe kick it to communications, because it's really about what's available. And I think there's some laws in place because of discoverable stuff, and as far as like freedom of information and people will be able to request information, there's definitely some retention policies that are legally set that would need to be. So I wouldn't feel comfortable making a recommendation beyond checking with your lawyer on what is actually the legal retention requirements.
Yeah, and if you have a general counsel telling you that like, oh, we can keep it forever, you need to find a new general counsel. Because that means they don't know what they're talking about.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll take it to Charlie then and find out what his timetable or what he shows for it.
And that's like nowadays is like standard best practices. They kind of have that pretty much everywhere nowadays.
Yeah, and it's more about it's about reducing your liability. Last thing with the key card system then, are you gonna take that Island Village thing with the door being open? If there's people moving in front of it, are you gonna make sure that, or make a note of that one?
I already put the note. I put it on my notes.
Okay, cool. All right, Mayberry security, or sorry, anything else with key card? Are we good there? Cool. Mayberry?
So I spoke to Cleve, that's the name of the gentleman for Mayberry. All I need from you guys is to provide me with dates and times, and I'll schedule the meeting so that we could all attend, and he'll bring the equipment over and show us exactly what they intend on using, and they could probably send us pictures.
Did they have a recommendation of what they wanted to do? Because I think that was part of it too. And Tom, maybe you can correct me on this one, but I thought we wanted to know what exactly they wanted to do. Because we weren't going to just look at equipment and say, go. It was more of where do you want to put stuff, right?
So the walkthrough was also mentioned to them. They're willing to do the walkthrough. I went from the technology perspective. Let's know what equipment we're going to use if we decide to go this route. How does it get placed? Because you had mentioned that there was ARC concerns and other issues. They will do the walkthrough irrespective of you going with it or not. So that's not an issue. It's more about just have an initial discussion, go over the tech, and then do the walkthrough. Sorry if I omitted that initially, but yeah.
Bill,
Cool.
Tom, you guys were closer to this than I have been. What's your thoughts?
I'm sorry, I'm researching retention policies. I got lost in a dog trail.
I think we left it at the last meeting that we're gonna get them in and hear what they have to say and go look at the facilities and take it from there. We don't know what they're proposing, so we have to just hear them out and see, does it make sense?
Well, it sounds like they want to just review that they won't have the proposing part. That I think that's my concern is that they won't have the proposing part. They're just showing the technology, not where they would recommend putting it. And I don't know if we need that information going into a meeting or
Yeah, I think if they believe that we have security deficiencies, and we probably do, would certainly be beneficial to us to hear where they are and to hear what their plan to address those are. So it would seem like we would want to start with a walkthrough. Show us where the problems are and what you would do about them, and then we can decide, do we address them ourselves or do we let them address them for us?
So I think if they want to start with a walkthrough and get that done, and then we'll set up the meeting. But we'll also need confirmation from Andrew on whether I assume that meeting is going to have to be closed, just because we are talking about where like specific locations where there are vulnerabilities in the community, and we wouldn't want that be available to the public.
Yeah, I guess, is it appropriate for them to participate in maybe next month's technology committee meeting, but just withhold any of the locations? They would just speak about the possible solutions.
I think it's critical for us to understand what the locations are and what they're recommending before we would proceed.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, then I guess on that side, then I would want them to produce a report to us before there's any meeting. They don't need to tell us in person. They can produce that in a report to CROA.
Does anybody in the tech committee want to participate on the walkthrough with me?
Yeah, I definitely want to be there.
Okay, anyone else?
I'm very curious. I'll go as well.
Steven, right?
Yep.
Okay.
I think Breck,
Tom.
Breck, were you interested as well?
You hear me?
Yes.
Now we can. You sound a little muffled.
Testing 1, 2.
There we go.
Doesn't have to like.
Why don't you, when you find out when it would be, and we can always send it out to the entire committee, and if people are able to go, let's make sure we prioritize Tom, Stephen, and I believe Breck's schedule, but then we can send it out to the rest of the committee.
Okay, no problem. Will do. All right.
I know I'm
Mhm.
traveling a lot this month, so I will be very difficult to schedule around.
Okay.
Anything else on this one? Okay. ONR, that's our next big thing.
Okay, so we had the meeting with comms. Essentially we went over the communications component and some of the other features for the end user experience. A lot of questions came up. Krista, you was there. What I did was I reached out to Joey Mizrahi, who's our rep for ONR. I'm gonna send an email on Friday to the comms committee and to the tech committee to see who's gonna participate in meeting with ONR because there was a lot of questions that needed to be answered. And yeah, that's where I'm at with it. There was no issues outside of that in terms of just getting that scheduled.
Did you get everybody in the communications committee
Not
set
yet.
up?
Not
Okay,
yet.
because I think that was the next action item because they wanted to get in there and look at it and play around before and then meet again.
Not yet, and that's on me. I've been so focused on getting these key cards up that it slipped off from me. So let me just note that to get it done tomorrow in the
Okay.
afternoon.
And while you're at it, you
Ah.
may as well set up the Parks and Rec folks, because I think our next action item is also setting up a joint workshop with Parks and Rec to make
Parks
sure
and
that
Recs.
they have what they need.
Communications committee, Parks and Rec Communications Committee, the rest of technology.
So beyond that, we don't really have a plan as
So-
far as like we don't have there's not really a laid out rollout plan.
No,
So we need to kind of figure out what we're doing and how we're going to proceed. One of the biggest things we do need to get with Parks and Rec, like, so that's a clear next action item because one of the key features that we're bringing this application in for is a replacement of the Rec Pro system. So we do need to make sure that it fully meets those needs. That's a clear next step. Beyond that, we don't have anything yet. So I think where we need to discuss is this committee is figuring out what does the next steps look like and where are we looking at for our timeline. Knowing that the main deadline is in March of 2022 is when our Rec Pro
2025.
2025, sorry. March of 2025 is when our Rec Pro license is over or subscription is over. So we do need to have a replacement system in place for at least the recreation stuff by then.
So let me give you the heads up. It's worse than that. Rec Pro got bought out by another company and they're no longer going to support. I got that call on Monday. So after that date, that's it. They actually sent out an email notice.
After what date?
After March 2025. I think
Okay,
it's March.
so we still have March 2025.
Yeah,
Like
right.
that's the date we're trying. Like I mean, personally, I would want to be launched sooner than that and not be pushing it to the very last minute. But we just more so from an awareness of this committee is our there's a drop dead date right there that we need to be aware of and make sure that whatever we plan, we meet that date. Beyond that, there isn't any hard date that's driving this.
Yeah, I guess I'll push back on everyone here and say that if ONR isn't out this year, that's a failure of both myself as liaison of the technology committee and us as a whole with Gray Manors. So we need to definitely have that up and running prior to that March date. And ideally, I'm going to put a little pressure on Jose and say, hopefully in the next 90 days.
I don't think we'll be
Now, I'm
ready in
not
90
saying
days.
it's going to be a full, and that's where I think the conversation needs to be had of, Jose, can you provide the full features of ONR? Because the two must-haves, I think, are the reservation system that's going to replace Rec Pro and the key card access, and probably the one-way notification. So those three are kind of the base. And then what else can be rolled out with it? That's that discussion for the committee of what should be included.
Okay.
I hesitate to throw out 90 days. I will not push the team as volunteers. I will not push the team to put something out there that's not ready, knowing our resident base. If we're going to push it out, we need to make sure that it's ready and it's ready for the residents. 90 days is not going to be enough time to evaluate the features and make sure those things are turned off and accurately and adequately pilot. It may be, but I will not commit to a 90-day today, based on the state that we're in right now.
So you don't need to commit. I'm just saying that if we need to water something down to get a functional product out there and working, I would prefer that than for us to have every single bell and whistle work and we're waiting until March of next year.
And I think that's where we need a plan. Like we need a project plan, because I'm more than happy to like work with phased rollout. I think in most cases you want to have phased rollouts and a lot of things because it continues to generate the excitement. So we nail the features down that we need. And then you can continue to phase in the bonus stuff that we're adding, like the incremental. We need to cover the bases for that initial rollout. We need that minimum viable. But we do need to then we can continue to add like the communication piece. Some of that's bonus stuff. So it doesn't need to be part of the minimum viable. There's other things that don't need to be part of minimum viable.
So I'll tell you what, Krista, let me prepare the project plan based on what you're saying right now, because now I have a better understanding of what it is what kind of framework you want. I can build that out. I could send it to you, and then you tell me yes, no, and then we'll just we'll stick to something that we can move.
I think Molly had some interest in this one, if I remember correctly from the last meeting.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And then I know Stephen, like this is part of your background as well. So if you had any, please feel free to add.
So Molly and Stephen.
Okay, I'll go out on a limb and say I want nothing to do with this. However, I do leverage what Andrew just said. I'd like to, as a part of this plan, I would like to see the integration or the development plan of the integration of the card key access. I know I already said that, and it sounds redundant, but I think that's important. What's the development plan for integrating it? That's a button that we don't even have on our app right now.
So
part of this plan.
If I'm hearing correctly from everyone, like the two key features that need to be prioritized are the recreation and the key card access. Are there any other key features that need to be prioritized? I know Andrew mentioned the notifications, but we also I'm getting a ton of notifications through the other app. So I don't know, that's probably, actually, that reminds me, the connection into the GoGov app. So adding a tile to send you to GoGov. So there is it's a one-stop shop. That's probably the other key piece of information, because we did say originally that we don't want to have two apps, and building in that integration or at least connection to GoGov was critical.
Well noted. I'll make sure that I prep that up and send it to you guys.
And then I can reach out to the Parks and Rec chair to see when we could schedule a workshop.
Okay.
Okay. What else do we need from that? Anything right now?
We just have one more item that I need to bring up, but it's not related to ONR.
Anything else with ONR before we move on? Okay, so then the wireless
surveillance system.
Yes, this is a project that's probably a lot of us didn't even know we were doing. Because it has its roots all the way back to before this committee, when we had some damage done at the amphitheater in the back of Artisan Park. It also is connected with an initiative that Greg had for part of CCDD the development of the ability to be able to monitor locations where we had no backhaul ability. That is a wireless backhaul from a remote camera system. So Jose and I have been working hard on this. This is a full-time job. And anyway, the bottom line is, here it is. It's done. So unfortunately, we're not, I was hoping we'd be live today in person, but this is a self-contained box. This particular implementation mounts on a wall, but there's also pole mount versions of this. And this little arm with this camera, this is an Axis PTZ camera. This is beyond 1080p. This is a high resolution camera. And in this box is everything that you need to support the camera and connectivity to a wireless network. So all this box needs is power. So it doesn't need anything else. You can see the little antenna on the top. It has Wi-Fi so that everything is programmable from the street level if you got this mounted up on a pole somewhere. And everything is configurable over that Wi-Fi connection. It has transient protection for lightning strikes. So surge protection is built into it. This should meet all legal requirements. Now, I like to take credit for this thing, but this was a partnership. This design was a partnership between Axis Communications and Sierra Wireless, which is also known as Semtech. So these guys are leaders in wireless communications for like military, police, for the police, and of course Axis, as you know, is when it comes to cameras. All of our cameras throughout Celebration are Axis cameras. So this came off of a flyer that they produced, which we then ordered the parts for. And after several problems with the parts list that they provided, we finally got the correct parts and we built it out right here in this room. And it's ready to go. All it needs is a SIM card. So Jose has ordered the SIM card, and without getting into the capabilities here of exactly what this thing can do, suffice to say, it can do anything that our state-of-the-art security system anywhere in Celebration can do and more.
Mm-hmm.
There's full object analytics on the camera. This is a 10x optical zoom camera, and what we would call DM in engineering, this is the direct material cost. We're looking at $2,500 here, including the camera. So pretty excited to get this thing finished and get it out of here. And my wife would be pretty excited to get it out off the floor. So
That's awesome.
Pardon me. Yeah.
I was just gonna say that's awesome. Great work. Like I think this is huge and a perfect example of the things that can be done within these committees. I feel like there's definitely some and I don't want to say the word press, but that's what the word that comes to mind of just talking about the things that are coming out of the committee to show. I think we get so much of bad news and arguments coming out of committees that this will be a great opportunity to showcase some of the work within a committee. Obviously we're not going to say exactly like where we're going to put them and things like that, but maybe once we get that first one in, it's an opportunity to work with Liz and potentially even have something in the Celebration magazine to say some of this great work that's been done. So I just want to take a minute to say give you kudos and props.
Thank you. It's a team effort, but thank you. So the next step, so the committee, other than just bringing you up to speed on this, is where we are with this project, which we've largely forgotten about. I want to make sure that this gets completed. So this is something that this committee has done this year. And we can say, we are doing something in addition to the other cool stuff that we're doing with access control on our and all that. But one of the things I would like us to talk about is now, I've been calling this a beta test site. Right, it should work, but we haven't tested. I don't even have the SIM card yet. So we want to deploy it somewhere. All it's going to need is power. And I don't know that it's probably within the scope of our committee, but somehow we have to have a conversation, and maybe Andrew or with the board or Krista, you and Andrew, where do we put this thing? In my vision, it goes somewhere that we need it to go. And then we integrate it with our current milestone security software. And then we run a test. This thing is good to 70 degrees C. So it will definitely stand and over 100 miles per hour wind load. So this thing is ready for Florida.
So
We want to get
Andrew-
it out there.
So Andrew, from a next steps perspective, obviously we'll need either, I don't know if it's you and I working together to say okay, or if you think the board needs more of an overview. And if that's the case, we probably need to have it as a closed session so we can talk about specific locations of where we would want to set it up as a beta. Obviously people will know where it is once it's out there, but talking about the vulnerable locations, we don't want to have that conversation in a public forum.
Yeah, I would look at it as if Tom and Krista, if you want to speak together and figure out a location or a short list of locations, then produce that to me, and I'll just run it by the board to confirm they're comfortable with it, and we'll go into that next step of this application. And I guess my one question for you, Tom, is I know you said power supply is the only issue, so are we looking for it to be hardwired, or
Yeah.
can it be battery powered?
Well, no, it's 120 volt. This one that I built is 120 volt power supply. I have been looking though at solar panel and inverter with batteries. And I'm planning to take some measurements on this unit once we get it up and operational. It's exactly how much current it draws, so we can determine what the size of that panel and battery would need to be. I think it would be nice to have the capability of deploying these at locations where it requires no interconnection at all to anything. It's a standalone unit. That would be the next logical step in my mind. And there are places like that in Celebration where we need this, particularly in CCDD properties. But at the moment, we need to put it somewhere where we have power, like, maybe Longview, where we've seen, on the back porch, we've seen a lot of action down there, or back in at the
So
amphitheater in
let's, Tom, maybe
west.
you and I can come up with a
Okay.
couple of locations. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
going to lean on you for that. And then we'll just work with Andrew to send that over to the board, and we can get approval to, I don't know if we'll have to go through ARC as well. So I'll leave that, Andrew, you can help us navigate that to make
Yeah.
sure where we put that up. At this point, are we solely wanting to look at CROA, or because I know there was conversations about how CCDD with the light poles is a very advantageous position. Are we just going to keep the initial beta to a CROA?
I would say, yeah, let's keep it to CROA. And would you consider this an enhancement to an existing camera we have out there, where if there's already an existing power supply, just either putting it next to it or replacing an existing one for that
Now,
test?
this isn't a place where we need one, but don't have
Yeah.
the facilities to support one.
Correct.
So this is going to use the wireless network, in this case Verizon, as the data connection back to the network, which will ultimately come back to one of our servers. But this goes somewhere where we don't have coverage but need it.
Yes.
And there are plenty of those places around, but echoing what Krista said, as a resident, and not speaking as a technology committee, I would like to widen the opportunity to use this and to demonstrate it to CCDD or any other entity in Celebration that needs it.
Mm-hmm. So why don't we
and-
start with, Tom and I'll get together and pick out some locations. Was there anyone else involved at this point, Tom, that we should make sure is involved with that? I mean, we can copy the whole committee. That's fine on the locations, and I think we will when we can send that over to Andrew and the committee. The committee can be aware of what the locations are, and we'll send that over to navigate. So we'll come up with that short list.
Okay.
And then go from there. But the whole purpose of this is to test in a place that we can't currently get service, or we currently do not have cameras. So that's an important factor in the locations.
And there are
So
areas, even in Island Village, where we have, Jose and I have talked about where we need coverage, out in Island Village where we don't have cameras there. So, I mean, there are plenty of places.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just kind of curious, like because we're talking, we're going to be talking with Mayberry Security, and they're going to potentially talk about like where they felt there's some gaps at and where they could place some cameras. It if I was if I'm an outsider looking in, this looks duplicative to me. When you say that you've been working on a wireless surveillance system, and then now we're going to go talk to Mayberry and they're going to come back with recommendations. And for all we know, they have a wireless surveillance system that they can install. We just haven't explored that option. We haven't presented them or asked them that question. So I'm looking at it from a resident that pays pays all these fees, and I'm asking myself is like, why are we talking about wireless security systems, surveillance systems, and also talking to Mayberry about them? We're paying them a lot of money, and they're telling us that they're going to give us free security cameras. So we got, because how many of those cameras have we bought?
No, this is a one of a kind right here. I mean, these are off the shelf parts. But just to answer your question, though, I understand where you're coming from, but you're relatively new to the committee. This project started way before Mayberry. Before. There was no such thing as Mayberry at the time.
Yeah, but I mean, like, again, time changes everything, right? So if I was looking at it from a portfolio manager perspective, I'd be telling you, okay, we're canceling this and we're going with Mayberry because our fees are inclusive of them installing cameras.
Once we see what they have,
once they see what they had. So my only recommendation would be that you can by all means go forward and start looking at places that we could probably make use of it, installing it, but I wouldn't take any actions that would require any funding to actually implement until we know if Mayberry is unable or unwilling to provide some type of similar capability within the cost that they said that they're willing to provide it to. So, and then even so, I would even argue with, if they come back and say like, hey, well, for $2,500, not only will install it, but we'll pay for any of the maintenance to run a power line out there to get it done, and then you don't have to worry about maintenance or anything like that. And if the cost is similar or if it's a little bit more, that just makes more sense to me.
Yeah, and I see that 100%, and it's kind of where I was thinking too. So, but I do think we proceed with our pilot, so we have that information, and then we wait and see what Mayberry has. I think Lauren has her hand up too. One of the things we also need to consider is the committee is when we're looking at Mayberry, it is tied to our contract, and so just a little history too. They came to us and said, "Hey, we can do this," versus us seeking them out. One thing we'll have to consider once we see what they have versus what we have is the integration into our system, what we would be giving them access to within our system, and then what does that look like if we were to change vendors? So those are I don't have those answers, and those are questions that we'll definitely want to ask. Lauren, you said you have your hand up too.
Yeah, thanks. So they don't necessarily want to access our system, though they are willing to talk about integrating. They are fully able to put cameras in locations where you don't have power sources. They're all solar and satellite capable. And they monitor them 24/7 at no additional fee based on the base rate that we're paying. So those are just things to consider. I know you guys are going to talk to them later, but just things to keep in mind.
So I think we finished the pilot to see what it. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just like, I wasn't trying to poop on it as not. It's saying it wasn't an accomplishment, but again, I'm just looking at it from a outside perspective. Is that it doesn't, to me, it's not computing like why we're talking about another surveillance system on top of one that we're already paying a base for, and it's just like if I was a resident coming in here, I was like, why are you guys wasting my money?
Yeah, and that's valid. It's absolutely valid. And especially since these two things are on the same agenda, and one came up after the other. So that is something we definitely need to consider. With the cost, I think at this point we're done with the cost perspective from the pilot. So having that information of what we can do in-house will be useful information. And then we can take that information, compare it to what we can get with Mayberry, ask the questions that we all want to ask, and then
But
figure out what to do.
Is the cost done? Because if it's cellular, that means you have to have some type of subscription to pay for it. And then we also have to run power to it. So the cost is not done.
The power, they were looking at places that already had power.
Well, but who's going to hire the electrician to install it? There's still cost, is all I'm just saying.
And there's
It
also
just-
a monthly recurring cost for data
Yeah.
and cellular
So, I mean,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, but
I just-
there's-
per unit.
But there's no free lunch. I mean, and no matter, you go to Mayberry, it's gotta be buried somewhere in their price. We're not gonna have data connectivity for free. So.
Yeah, but
So I guess,
mean,
do we want to stop where we're at now and wait until we hear from Mayberry before proceeding, or do we want to wrap this pilot?
I would recommend that I feel like it would be financially responsible of the group to pause it until we hear what Mayberry's capabilities are before we start investing any more money into installing any additional surveillance systems. And we ask all the questions that we have. I mean, if that's my vote.
I think we should, we need to call this to a vote then of the committee. My concern is what's gonna happen after Mayberry goes away. This is the second security company. This project is basically done. And we've already put in the time, and now for $45 a month, we can test it. Mayberry could come or go. So my vote would be to proceed, but I think we should take a committee vote, and if they want to pause the program, I have no problem bringing the hardware over to Jose and he can put it in storage. It's not an issue. It's less work for me. I'm good with that. So Krista, can you call it to a vote and decide whether you can phrase it however you will?
Anyone can
Steven.
motion. Anyone on the committee can motion. So if you want to make a motion,
Well, my motion is to proceed with the project and find a beta test site and continue with it to demonstrate feasibility.
okay, and then you would need a second, and then we would have discussion, and then we would vote.
I'll second it.
Second Tom's motion.
Okay. Any discussion? And we've already had some discussion. Any discussion on further discussion? I know we didn't hear. Bill, do you have stuff to add?
Nope.
I can't see everybody at the same time, so I don't know if there was anybody else had
Oh,
anything.
you can do a, not to get off topic, but you can do a meet room. So I've got mine where I see everyone all in one picture. So it's a setting for Teams if you weren't aware.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Yeah, you go to view.
I swear Teams changes their setting. I update Teams like 3 times a day, I feel like. I updated it twice today. All right.
And just before you call for vote, we're meeting with Mayberry this next meeting, right? Within this by next month, right?
This month, July.
It's not scheduled yet, but that'd be the hope.
Would Mayberry be able to provide any sort of pricing details at that meeting?
Well, I think that they're going to share everything that's all inclusive. I guess that we would have to, if we're going to pull up similar, something like, kind of what the wireless surveillance system project that's been going on, that might have some additional costs. But I mean, from what Lauren stated earlier, it sounds like it's not, it's inclusive of the price. But, to Tom's and Team's, comments about like, hey, if they go away, those cameras potentially go away as well. So, I mean, that's something to consider as well.
Although all-inclusive just makes me really nervous. Like, would they have the ability to raise the price? How long are we locked in for? That makes me nervous whenever someone says all-inclusive with no price changes.
I mean, the reality is that we have 127 cameras already in Celebration that we're supporting. That's where we are. So we're talking about adding an additional camera right now.
And another option, so I also want to be sensitive to the work that's being done. So right now the motion on the table is around moving forward with the pilot. I think there's also the potential to entertain a motion to table moving forward with the pilot a month until we have the meeting with Mayberry instead of, because I don't want, depending on where everyone is leaning, voting down the pilot, we would have voted it down and we wouldn't proceed, versus tabling it gives us more time to make that decision.
I'm only proposing that we have all the data and facts in front of us by the time, so that we can make an informed decision. I don't think that right now, if you said like, hey, Stephen, are you going to do you want to can it or do you want to move forward with it? I say, well, I would say move forward with it because I'm just going based off of the information I have right now. But if we can postpone it by 30 days until we can get, or whenever we can get a meeting with Mayberry to understand what is all inclusive really means, then we can, go forward from there. And they could even come back and say like, hey, we're going to cover, the amphitheater and Artisan Park. We're going to cover some of the stuff that's going on in North Village or areas where you've got gaps in North Village, et cetera. So it is, I just think that we're making a decision without all the information available to us when we've got potential venues of reduced cost. Ultimately,
We're making this a binary decision when it can be a dual path decision. I think a $45 SIM card to test and see if it's viable is not a big deal when we've already gotten to where we are. And we can find out from Mayberry. I agree, all inclusive makes my everything spidey sense tingle. I like the idea of owning it. We already have an infrastructure. This can expand our capabilities. We're at the 1 yard line. Why don't we just move ahead with this, with a test? It's a reversible decision. So why are we making it a binary choice when we can do a dual path? I guess would be because I would vote for keeping going ahead. But that's my bias as a trying to always be self-reliant kind of person.
So, okay, well, in that, I don't disagree with you, but then I would want to have a itemized list of the cost, because I just don't, I don't believe for a hot second that when we say like, well, we're at the 1 yard line and it's only $45 moving forward from there, that can't be true. Unless it's, we're absorbing
it's a SIM card and power.
The cost within our own, internal staff to install it and do all of the necessary physical labor and administrative overhaul onto it, fine, great. It's only $45, but yeah, I'm not a penny. I don't like to say I'm a cheap person, but I'm just being kind of sensitive to the fact that we just closed down the town hall, which showed a mismanagement of funding of how we were supposed to be spending our money to take care of our infrastructure. And we're talking about expanding our own infrastructure, and on top of, continuing to pay for like Mayberry security. I'm just looking at it from a fiduciary perspective.
And at the same time, we have areas of the community we need to cover. And that's part of where this thing, the genesis of this came. So, even if it's $1,000 more to get started in a $45, $60 SIM card, having the information that it can be done, I think we put a lot of effort. It's not penny wise, pound foolish, I would say, but there's a lot that's gone in to get us to this point. And as Tom said, it'd be fine with him if he didn't have to keep doing this. But I am very curious at the quality of the cellular signal, how well it's going to work, what are the bandwidth requirements. That would get us into a more informed position to make a decision to say, hey, let's put this with Mayberry, or, oh, wow, this can actually be added. The other aspect of this, and we talked about it some, is the ability to temporarily put these things up for events. And having a mobile cellular system that we could temporarily put up would be an extra level of safety to the community. And if we're going to rely on a vendor to do that, sourcing materials, parts, timelines, finger pointing of who's responsible for what, I would like to see this test go through so we have real world data to compare with. So my vote would be to keep moving.
So can we get clarification on what we would be voting for? Would be to proceed with the identifying a location, and the installation of one single camera. And coming out of that, like having the full information of what it would cost per if we were to add additional. Correct? Am I correct in that's what we would have coming out of this? Okay.
Yeah, agree.
Any other discussion before we call the question?
I just want to say from the fiduciary perspective, I think the absolute best thing we can do is to put pressure on Mayberry because they came with us for the idea to give us more cameras, which told me that there's some sort of sales thing, but what a great way to put pressure on them. For these meetings are public for them to know that we're also considering other solutions. So if we're trying to get the best deal from Mayberry, the best thing we can do is have them know that it's not a shoe-in just because they're already a vendor, that there are other options we could pursue.
I guess question for Lauren and Jose to find out with Mayberry is if they install cameras, do we own them? Do they own them? Or can we pay to own them? Right? Because I think if they're going to keep it, then that changes the conversation quite a bit of are we being self-reliant or not?
We can find out. We can speak to Mayberry.
And I think, yeah, that would be part of the discussion we have with them, I believe, too.
And then the second piece would be what type of cameras are they installing and how does that compare to what Tom has put together?
And yeah, I think there's a lot of questions. Like, and would we have access to them through our security system, or is it just them having access to them? And you know, there's definitely a lot of questions. Okay. Anybody else? All right, I don't know, since we're on Teams, I guess it's probably easiest to do like a roll call because not everybody's on video. So we'll call the question and I'll just go, Bill. Voting, the motion
Yes.
is to proceed with the pilot.
Yes, to proceed.
Okay, Stephen? You're muted.
Yeah, assuming that as long as we get the data, that we discussed, I'm okay with proceeding with it.
Okay. And Breck says proceed in the chat. Molly?
Yes, proceed.
Tom?
Yes.
And I say yes as well. Okay. Cool. So next steps for that, Tom and I, we're going to give locations. We're going to put together a list of locations. All right. Other action items.
One last.
Andrew, do you have something?
Yeah, I will get this on the workshop for next week as far as a conversation for the board that we are progressing in this manner.
All right. Let's see. We talked about keycard access. Was there anything else on the action items that we needed to discuss there?
We think we kind of covered most of the stuff.
Same with GoGov and custom report findings. I think we covered all those. Anybody have any additional comments or questions?
Yes. Yeah, I would just say in doing my quick review of document retention policies, I know for the company I work for, there are 5 pages of classifications and types and everything else. So Andrew, this is going to probably lead to a bigger conversation. Jose, it would be good to find out what Grand Manor suggested policy retention, what would you all do corporately? And then that could go into the mix of talking to our legal counsel about what CROA's retention policies will be. It's going to be a bigger discussion. So just heads up.
Got it.
That's my comment.
And Andrew, for the GoGov meeting, you said it's moving to once a week or once a month. Have they solidified the schedule? Is next week's meeting still on for it?
Yeah, next week is the first monthly meeting.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
And then one thing that came up in finance that I meant to share this, I'll send it out later, but they were doing some review of various IT systems or applications, and I wanted to have the committee review to see if there's overlap or all are necessary. So I will get that list out to you guys, and maybe by the next meeting we can discuss if they're truly everything that we should continue to have, or if there's overlap or something's obsolete and no longer needed.
Anyone else have any comments? Entertaining a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
All right, all in favor? All right, have a good one. Enjoy your
Happy
holiday
4th.
weekend. And
Yeah, happy 4th of July, everyone.
hopefully I'll see some of you at the parade tomorrow.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Have a good night.